Hi everyone, Jared here. Today we're going to be looking at Earthbound, originally released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. It was just released last week for the Wii U's Virtual Console. This is one that I know you guys have been waiting very long time for. So let's jump right on in. Well, to begin, we're going to talk a little bit about the story and setting and why those are the absolute best aspects of the game. What you're seeing right now is basically the opening of the game, and as you can tell, it takes place in a modern contemporary setting. And this was very original back in 1995, and it holds up tremendously well today. For the most part, back then, games like this, like RPGs like this, were primarily, fantasy based. Like you had your Dragon Quests, you had your Final Fantasies, and you had others like Breath of Fire and things like that. So it was really original to have a game like this back in that time period. And like I say, it holds up tremendously well, but for a different reason today. Today it's not like it was back then. Back then, if you played it in 1995, you're like, oh, cool, this is like my world. Like I can go around and there's my arcade and, things like that. And of course, this was a game that was directed by a Japanese person. So it was their perception on how they viewed America. And it's unique. But for us back then, it was sort of like, oh, well, this is, I'm playing sort of like my life, although with this weird, unique twist to it. Today, it's funny because you look back and you're like, oh, I remember that. And you get this feeling of nostalgia. Like, for example, here where I live, there are no more arcades. They're long closed up. I mean, trying to find a payphone today, good luck. You'll find a bum on the street sooner than you will a payphone. So it's different. It's completely changed just because of that. But the story and setting, like I say, they appeal for a completely different reason today, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's fantastic. Gameplay mechanics are also really unique because of the setting. I mean, today, again, we take this for granted, but players have to visit a hospital in order to cure themselves from different ailments they may have. They got to get money from an ATM in order to buy different items they might want. There's also public payphones. That's how you save your progress. Just little things like that, which we take for granted today, were revolutionary. They were basically changing what had been done before. So while all those individual things might have been in, say, like a Dragon Quest game, they were always in that fantasy setting. So by bringing it into the contemporary setting, it did change things. It made it feel unique and fresh, even though it wasn't the most original idea out there at the time. Although the ATM thing was pretty cool. All right, I'm not going to talk about the story in detail. You can pretty much figure it out. A meteor falls, Ness wants to investigate, and more or less that's the end of the story. Eventually it turns into this, you got to save the entire universe, and by doing that you need to collect these 8 specific memory stone sound thingies and pick up 3 other party members. That's all I'm going to tell you. The rest is up to you. So let's move on to just general things I really like that hold up really well. For one thing, Earthbound on the Virtual Console for the Wii U is the Earthbound you know and love, meaning it hasn't been changed or altered in any way, shape, or form, which is a good thing. The humor is still as actually funny as you remember it. You will actually laugh out loud during some of the dialogue. It's just classic. The combat system as a whole is very simple. It was simple back in 1995, and it's simple even today, meaning there's no attribute points you need to worry about. There's no classes or anything like that. This is basically a story-driven RPG through and through. However, to spice things up, what Nintendo did was they added a health dial. So basically, players' health is on this flip dial. So if they're attacked in a normal RPG, let's say they have 10 hit points and an enemy hits them for 5. Today, what would typically happen is, just like back then, you just see your health instantly down to 5. Okay? But with this game, because you have that flip dial, it starts at 10, you'd see it go 9, then 8, 7, 6, like that. So why this is so strategically important is because if the player can heal themselves before the flip dial reaches whatever their new health level is supposed to be, you can actually prevent yourself from being killed. or you can get for one of your other characters, it's entirely possible to get it so that, let's say, I don't know, let's say Paula is going to do some really powerful attack. It's very possible for her to get that attack off before she was killed, for example. Just it makes it really unique, and I don't know why more developers haven't used the system. It's really, really original. Something else that's very original, well, at least was back then, was the fact that depending on your level, if you significantly out-level your opponents, they'll actually not only run away from you, but if you touch into them, you'll get an auto win where you don't even have to fight. It just boom, you win and you get the experience. And because of that system, grinding isn't really a big issue. I know I heard a lot of people complaining about grinding with this game, but I haven't found that at all. I mean, at no point did I actually have to stand there and grind out battle after battle after battle. One of the tricks is when you're in the dungeons, go straight to the boss, defeat the boss. If you do that, you will be able to basically turn around and just one-shot every single enemy that's in the rest of the dungeon, which is what I do, because then I go and explore the dungeon to pick up any of the gift boxes that contain sweet little items around. Now, battles as a whole have 3 different states. If the enemy attacks Ness head-on, you have your regular battle. If they touch his back, though, like if you're turned away, they get 1 free turn, but the same is true for you. So imagine this. If you're strong enough, what can happen, and what often does happen, is you beat that boss of the dungeon, all the enemies have their back turned to you, all you have to do is touch them and you'll get the auto win. Boom, get your experience. So I guess you could call that a form of grinding, but I'll take that type of grinding over mindless, you know, battle after battle after battle any day of the week. The audio-visual presentation was actually funny because that was one of the major reasons people thought the game was being delayed for so many years, because in terms of the audio, a lot of the music samples are based off real-world hits from the Beatles and other mainstream pop bands. So you can expect a truly diverse soundtrack, and it's really, really catchy. You'll see, I don't want to say anything, but you'll see as you play through the game, it's really, really original. In terms of graphics, as you can see, it's not the most visually impressive game on the Super Nintendo, but it is one of the most varied. And I don't show too much here because I don't have very much time, but I just want to say it gets original as you move on. That's it. You'll see as you play. Now, one of the big additions to the Wii U version is the inclusion of Miiverse, and therefore the official Nintendo Earthbound community. And it's really amazing what people have been able to do on the Miiverse, from pretty pictures to posting their comments and experiences to even asking for help and things like that. It's very, very useful. Now, as with almost all old games, the game is not perfect, and certain things have not aged quite as well as others. There's only primarily one kind of negative aspect to it. But first, let's jump into one of the other issues. And that is in terms of kind of programming bugs, if you will. There is a trick that isn't really a trick. It has to be a programming bug that sort of made its way in and no one saw it when they were testing and they just left it in. Or maybe it is an official trick, but either way, you can take certain power-ups, edible power-ups, for example, like the magical truffle, and if you pair that with any of the toppings, say like ketchup, and you give the item, all of that stuff, to one person, let's say Paula, and then Paula gives herself the truffle, as long as she uses the truffle in battle, it will give back psi points like indefinitely. So it basically gives you godlike powers. And these are, you know, that, like I say, that's kind of a negative, because in the sense it's like you can do that with any of those edible items, and there's one that increases your stats, and if you just farm the living crap out of that, like just basically constantly go into battles, have everyone defend, and just keep using this one item over and over and over and over again, in theory you could have 999 to every single one of your stats if you're really that, like, you know, into the game and you want to become literally like a god. And I think, and I say this is like a programming bug or something, because if you do this trick outside of battle, it's gone. You can only do it once. So yeah, So that's one thing. But like I say, I mean, that's not the end of the world. That's entirely up to you. And most people who are playing it for the first time won't even know that. But here's a real issue. A real issue is with the psi attacks and items not having dedicated dialogue boxes at all times. Yes, you can go into the status and check out what your psi attacks do at, when you're outside of combat. But when you're in the heat of battle and you don't remember, say you have one of your guys has poison, and you're like, damn it, was it healing alpha or beta? Because the higher the strength of your healing, of course, it's going to heal more, but it's also going to use more points. And points are so vital that you're not going to want to waste them. The same thing can be said for items. When you want to use an item, that's pretty much like the way it is. You just go in combat, you go to goods, and you can click on the item that you want to use. But if you don't remember exactly what it did when you were outside of combat, you're kind of screwed. So it's just little things like that. I mean, that was the way the game was created, and that's fine for 1995. But again, we're reviewing this in 2013, so obviously, you know, some players might have an issue with that. The only really negative thing outside of that I can really say is about how weapons and armor and items work when you go to buy them. Basically, when you go to a new town, the only way you know it's an upgrade is if your character box flashes. And in terms of items, you don't know anything. The only way you know any details is when you actually buy the good. And that kind of sucks, because it would be nice to know, for example, if I'm going to buy this defensive item, is it going to increase my defense by 1 or 100 because it costs $5,000? Well, that's enough nitpicking, I think. That's all there is to it, guys. This game has held up incredibly well, and even after 18 years, I had an absolute blast, and I cannot recommend this game enough for you. If you do not own a Wii U, it is actually cheaper to buy a Wii U and download this game for $10 from the Virtual Console than it is to buy a mint condition copy from eBay. And if you do own a Wii U, it's highly, highly worth it to download this game. It's fantastic. It holds up tremendously well, like I've said 100 times already. Just pretty much stop watching this and go pick up the game. For the full written review, hit up projectcoe.com. It includes the infamous score. And as always, thank you very much for your dedication, for your support, and for watching this video. I'll be back very soon with another video review. Take care.
Do